Hello, my lovely friends. I'm back on a very bright and sunny day, which is a nice change because I felt like it had been ages since we've done a proper podcast in the traditional style. And surprisingly, I actually have quite a few exciting finished objects to talk about. So that's the plan for today. And if you have watched my last video where I did a little roundup of some Christmas gift knitting ideas, you'll know that I do not plan on knitting any Christmas gifts this year. So everything that I'm talking about today is purely for me, and also all of the whips that I have on the go at the moment and upcoming projects too. There's nothing festive, so I'm sorry if that's what you're here for, but I suppose knitting is a very wintry activity and maybe it's festive in its own way. So hopefully, I don't know, it'll be cozy and enjoyable anyway. Um, I'm gonna start off with what I'm wearing today, which I realised that I do this every time, and I wear the thing that I finished recently, and then you can't get a proper look at it. But what I will do, hopefully, is take some photos so that you can see more of the details close up, because I realised it kind of looks a bit like a dark blob from my view of the viewfinder at the moment. But this is actually a self-drafted pattern. This is a moss stitch chunky jumper, which I knit in Eastex Alaphos Loopy. And it's one of my all-time favourite yarns. I've loved every time that I've worked with it, and I definitely will again. And I believe I finished this in record time. Let me just check. 10 days. 10 days flat. But do you know why? It's because it only used 550 metres of yarn. So I only bought 6 balls of Alaphos Lopi and managed to get a full-sized adult raglan jumper, which is very exciting. So it was knit on 7mm needles for the ribbing and 8 for the body, which, you know, is quite large, but I think it works really well with this. And I think the moss stitch shows up really nicely in a chunkier yarn, because I know everybody is very, very funny and particular about chunky, bulky, whatever you call it, weight yarn and the way that it looks. And I'm the same to a degree, but I think the texture of Alaphos Lopi is so wonderfully rustic and sheepy that it just has a great finish, regardless of what size needles you use. So I'm kind of considering, I probably won't write a pattern for this. I don't know why I said that. Just because it is quite dull, and I feel like if you can knit a raglan, you could definitely look at pictures of this and improvise it yourself if you were so inclined. But what I did do was sort of a wider 4-stitch raglan increase to kind of break up the moss stitch texture a little bit. So the raglan increases are just knit in stockinette. And then I also carried on the stockinette bands up the underside of the arms and down the sides of the body to kind of connect them all together, which I kind of like the finish of. It also made it very easy to do the increases for the arms, because increasing in moss stitch can look a bit funny sometimes. So I did the increases in the stockinette, which under the arms. Increases, decreases. I don't know what I'm saying. Maybe it's just, no, I'm not going to start again. Forget it. You'll just have to live with it. So decreases. I did the decreases in the stockinette, which made it look a lot smoother, and it was a lot easier to also track, you know, where your decreases are, which in moss stitch can be a bit tricky sometimes. And then for the body, I just carried on the stockinette stripes down the side of the underarm. Hopefully you'll be able to see in a picture that I might put up here. And it kind of just broke up the moss stitch again a bit and sort of made it look like it was knit in panels, because I feel like I love the way that moss stitch looks. This was actually based on an idea that I'd saved on Pinterest a very, very long time ago, which is knit in a much chunkier weight yarn than I have used for this, but it was the same kind of vibe. But I realised that it doesn't necessarily have as nice a drape as stockinette does, and I felt like doing the flat ribbons down the side of the body just helped it to hang a little bit better and give a bit less Michelin Man, which I find that moss stitch sometimes can do, in the way don't know if it's a good way to describe it, but hopefully you know who I mean. Um, anyway, yeah, I'm very happy with the result. I finished it at the end of October, and to be honest, I've already worn it at least 3 days a week, mainly because it's been so cold here that I've needed it, and it's very, very warm. But it's wearing excellently so far. There's barely any pilling. The fabric hasn't really stretched in a funny way. Um, and I wonder if I can show you actually the colour of this yarn. I need to find out which shade it is. Apparently it's called Bordeaux, but it has this absolutely beautiful blue kind of teal and orange flecks in it. Hopefully you can see. Which I feel like just makes the colour look absolutely fabulous and makes the purple a little bit less monotonous, I suppose. Now, my second finish object, I'm going to have to put my laptop down to show you. I started way, way, way back in February because my problem with socks is that I'm not very motivated to work on them until it comes the time when I actually want to wear them. And then that gives me a bit of a kick to get them finished. Oh, they've kind of felted quite badly already. Whoops. But this is a sort of mismatching pair of DK socks, which are knit in Coop Knits Socks Yeah DK, not the fingering weight version, which I know they also do. And I have very mixed feelings about these. I just drafted a vanilla sock because I tend to not really follow patterns for socks anymore. I kind of know which construction techniques I like and I just stick to them. And so these have a folded hem at the top so that they've got quite a lot of stretch, because I sometimes find that ribbing can be quite tight on the ankles, especially with a bigger pair of socks where they kind of come higher up your calf. And then I did a short row heel, and I don't know what you call that type of toe. Anyway, I do them toe up. So I start with a Tunisian cast on or Judy's Magic cast on and work them up to the top of the leg, because I just find that that way it helps me keep control of how much yarn I'm using and how much I've got left, and also to keep them matching as well. And I find that the fit is better than when I do them top down. And I'm a recent convert to that because I always used to be a top down sock person. I think because that's just a lot of, oftentimes that's how patterns are written if you follow a sock pattern, a commercial sock pattern. And I think it took me experimenting with drafting my own to realise that actually toe up is the future, in my humble opinion. But yeah, do you know what? The yarn was a bit of an investment for sock yarn. I'm not one for spending a lot of money on sock yarn, mainly because I'm not buying yarn that I have to hand wash if I'm going to knit socks out of it, because to me it's just not worth the effort of hand washing a pair of socks every time you want to wear them. I don't own many pairs of socks, and it's a lot easier if it can be machine washed. And obviously I do still look after it when I machine wash it, but yeah, I always buy superwash, so that does rule out quite a lot of sock options. But the Sock Share DK is wonderfully soft. The colours are great. I really love the way that the colours have worked up on this. I think I said in a previous video, probably a very, very long time ago, whenever I was talking about them last, that I accidentally made them in the Daphne from Scooby-Doo colours. But do you know what? Now that they're together, I feel like it's not that obvious. And I have accidentally made them to match my next finish object, which I will be talking about in a second. So the one thing I will say is I've only worn these twice or 3 times, and you might be able to see here that the heels have already felted quite significantly, which is a bit of a shame because I don't really know what you do about that. If anyone has a solution, then I'd love to hear it, but I feel like for felting it's kind of irreversible. And obviously I did wash and block them when I finished them, and I think I have also been wearing them mainly around the house and not really with any shoes, so if anything, they've kind of felted in my Crocs, which is a bit unusual. But do you know what? They're chunky enough that it doesn't make them fit poorly, because I did make them a bit oversized. They're kind of more like a boot sock style. So they still fit. They're still very comfy. The wear is still great. They're shedding quite a lot of fluff, but that's probably a me problem. And the yarn is very, very soft and very cozy. So I suppose I can't be too critical. I know that softer, smoother yarns are going to felt more easily and pill more easily, and that's just the price that you have to pay. Third and final finished object for this episode, very, very exciting, is my finished Zakkuri cardigan by Noriko Ichikawa, which I have been working on for a little while. I think I started it at the end of September, but I've had this yarn in my stash for ages because I think I bought it whenever it was on sale in the colour that I wanted. And so I sort of snapped it up and then clung onto it until the time when I was ready to cast it on. But do you know what? I haven't blocked it yet, I will say. I've been waiting to show you and then I can block it because it's going to take about a week to dry in the current climate. So I thought I'll show it to you unblocked, and then hopefully in the next video or the next podcast app I'll be able to show you when it's all finished. And to be honest, even unblocked, it's looking pretty fabulous. I know the button band is looking a bit wonky at the moment, but that will definitely block out. And this was knit up in Rauma Fennel, and I believe the colour is light moss green, although it probably has a Norwegian shade name that I can't remember and probably can't pronounce. But it's something similar to that. Let me see if I can find it. 498 is the shade code, in case anybody cares, I don't know. And then it actually used far less yarn than the pattern anticipated, which is kind of nice because it means that I've got a good bit left over for a colour wet project, which I'll talk about in a moment. But honestly, huge fan of Rauma Fennel. I'd never worked with it before. The texture is lovely. This was knit with two ends held double because it's a kind of, it's almost like a jumper weight or spindrift weight yarn. So it's probably, what, sport in modern terms, maybe? It's lighter than a DK. I think two ends of it is probably worsted equivalent. But to be honest, it worked really well for this. The fabric is definitely a little bit closer, a little bit stiffer, but for this particular garment, that's not a problem for me. I quite like the way that it's finished. And already it has really nice stitch definition, and especially in the ribbing as well. It looks cracking. So I'm very excited to get it blocked and get it worn. That's going to be my project for this week. And I don't think I made any modifications. The only thing I will say is they did afterthought buttonholes, which I'd never done before, and I did end up having to not steek because it was only one stitch, but kind of, so I suppose slightly steek a buttonhole, in that the buttons that I had bought were way too large for the afterthought buttonholes, and I was debating buying new buttons or just cutting the buttonholes and steeking them to make them slightly larger, which I did end up doing. And to be honest, it wasn't a terrible idea. I think because I have a great yarn for steeking, it wasn't particularly risky. It's not a technique I've ever tried before, but I'm glad that I've done it once, even though it was only for a buttonhole, which is quite low stakes. But I'm glad because the tortoiseshell buttons, which I bought to go with it, I'm a big fan of, and I do think they just match really well with the yarn and the pattern. So I'm very, very pleased with the way it's turned out. And to be honest, I think I probably went a bit overkill with my reinforcing of the steeks and did about 3 layers of like blanket stitch and top stitching. But at least they are probably not going to come undone. And I know that once it's blocked, it'll give the yarns a chance to sort of fuse a bit better, and hopefully they won't come undone. We're going to hope and pray. But yeah, I have to say, the pattern didn't work up as quickly as I had anticipated, but then it is quite a substantial garment, so that's probably why. And I don't think it was an unenjoyable process. There's nothing particularly special about the way that it's constructed compared to other cardigans. You knit the button band at the same time as the body. That's the only thing I can really think of. Everything else, I mean, it's a raglan. You kind of know what you're getting. But the finished product is beautiful, so I'm very, very pleased. Next up, we've got a couple of current whips. The first one I'm going to chat about very briefly is my Mitsoni sweater, which I've actually put some rows on this month. And, oh, it's looking very 70s. I don't think I realised. I've not had a proper look at it held up like that. But yeah, I'm kind of working on this at a very slow pace. This is my bedroom project where which is not somewhere that I spend a load of time, but whenever I do in the evenings, if I'm watching telly up here or YouTube or whatever, I might put a couple of rows on this. It's a very easy project to pick up, but I'm in no rush to finish it. It's just a way to get rid of all of my double knit scraps, of which I have many. But I'm very pleased with the colour palette so far, and I feel like even though it's a very random concoction of yarn, it's working up quite well. So I feel like in not very many rows, I'll probably be able to bind off for the neck, and then that'll be the back panel finished. But yeah, there's no real timeline on this one. But I'm really enjoying the pattern so far. The chevron stitch is quite moorish, and I feel like it's the way with anything stripy. It's very easy to measure your progress, and that's quite motivating. But even though it's knit flat, I'm still finding it to be kind of medium quick, and the chevrons do keep things interesting without having to do any kind of complicated charts or colour work or any of that. So yeah, it's very exciting so far. I don't think it definitely won't be finished before the end of the year. It'll probably be taken into 2026, but I'm happy with that. That's fine. Now, next up, I have a new cast on. I have two new cast ons actually. This one is a little bit unpredictable and wasn't something that I was really planning on making, but I've decided to scrap a pattern that was in my queue and go for this instead. So I'm not sure if anyone remembers, but I did used to have a koi fish sweater which was knit in this West Yorkshire Spinners Croft Aran. I did cannibalise that jumper, and this is the remaining yarn. I've got about 1,000 meters in this colourway, and then I actually went and bought 3 more skeins in a different dye lot, which, yeah, is a bit of a problem, but it's fine. I'm going to work a way around it. So I have the bulk of the jumper in the same dye lot, and then I feel like the sleeves can be done in the new dye lot, and that should be enough. Anyway, we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it, but I haven't even told you about the pattern. The pattern that I've decided to make is the Rory sweater by Marie-Lena Tricot. Is that the right side or the wrong side? Oh, that's the wrong side. No, you're looking at the right side. There we go. There's not very much to see at the moment. I'm sorry, it's not more exciting. But I decided that since I had some really classic cream Aran, I had to make a really classic Aran jumper. I don't own one. I've never made one. But this seemed like the perfect pattern to try it out on. I will say, I understand the reference. I have never watched Gilmore Girls, but I know that the jumper that Rory Gilmore wears is very famous. And so I think the pattern is great anyway. And I understand it's a replica of the one from the programme. But maybe I'll have to watch it when I've finished it just so that I can say that I have in case anybody asks me about it. Anyway, I was just browsing Aran patterns on Ravelry, and it happened to be the one that I liked the most and had the right yarn for, and thought that it would fit the gauge for the yarn that I had as well, because that was important. And you know what? So far, I'm really enjoying it. I've never done a charted cable pattern before. I've done something with repeated cables, a little top, but never anything worked in panels like this, with different cable sections that you have to follow different parts of the chart for. So it's a nice challenge. It's definitely more of a slow progress kind of project. It's nothing that's going to be worked up that quickly, but luckily I'm not really in a rush to finish it. And to be honest, at the moment, I'm working on something different anyway. Hence the reason why this is on a stitch holder and there's no needles attached to it. But it's definitely what I'm going to come back to soon. I will say, my ribbing when I'm knitting flat is appalling. And I don't know if anyone has any advice on how to do this. It's a shame that I've already done the ribbing section for the back panel, because it's going to bug me now forever if somebody comes back with a great option. But maybe I'll try it on the front. I just cannot get the tension right whenever I'm knitting 1x1 rib flat. Whenever it's in the round, it's no bother at all. But for some reason, the stitches do look awful. Now, I do acknowledge that one of the main reasons my ribbing might be looking so bad is because the yarn has been reused. And even though I'm fairly sure I did steam it whenever I was winding it into these hanks, obviously it's not as smooth as it would be if it was completely new. So that might be a big part of it. But do you know what? I'm willing to just push through and call it a handmade quirk, and that's fine. I've also realised looking at it that my Italian cast on is not fantastic, but to be fair, it was my first time trying it, and I really like the technique, even though I'm not the quickest at it yet, but hopefully by the time I've cast on the other panel, I'll be a pro at that point. Now, for the last whip, I actually have a new acquisition, which was an impulse purchase. But my local yarn store this weekend was doing a bit of a pre-Christmas clear out, and they were having a sale of some leftover dye lots and some things that had gone out of production. And I went and bought a box of this fabulous Noro Madara in brown, which is not the most exciting colour, but to be honest, it is beautiful, this particular brown. And I also got it on sale, so it was a great deal. It was only enough for a slip over. There wasn't a sweater quantity. I think I got 800 meters in the end, but I obviously had to immediately cast on a new project. And that project, let me find it, is the Betsy vest by Miranda Copeland, which is absolutely fabulous and has a cow on it, so you can't lose. I'm very, very excited to get to the intarsia part. I've only done the back panel at the moment. This is the way that it's worked up so far. And honestly, just look at the colours. It's so exciting. It's much better than a plain brown. It's beautiful. And I feel like whenever it's got the cow motif on the front panel, it's going to look stunning. And to be honest, vests are something which I don't own many of. So I was always looking to add one to my collection. And this is going to be a great fit because, to be honest, even though if I feel like I should own a lot of brown knitwear, I actually don't. I don't think I have anything at the moment. So this is going to be the first. But yeah, it's very autumnal. It's beautiful. It's got great flecks of kind of green and rust and navy blue and stuff in it. And like all Noro yarns, I'm a sucker for them. They're just stunning. They are, you know, expensive for a reason. But the colour work I'm actually doing in a couple of leftover ends of Shetland Spindrift, which I've got. These were just random colours that I picked out of my stash. But this will do well for the Frisian cow, I think. And hopefully if I hold these double, I think that they will match the weight of the Madara really well, which is kind of like an Aran, but to be honest, it's a little bit variable, so it's on the chunkier side of Aran, I think. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the pattern so far. It's obviously knit in panels because it's got intarsia on the front. I did debate doing it in the round and then doing the cow motif as duplicate stitch, but to be honest, I did use duplicate stitch for my planet sweater and I wasn't completely thrilled with the finish, just because I feel like it's very, very difficult to get the colour work to lay flat whenever you duplicate stitch it on, because obviously there's more yarn in the stitches which have been duplicate stitched. That sounds obvious, but I just felt for this, I'm happy doing intarsia. It's a very small motif, it's not very many rows. It's worth the sacrifice of having to knit it flat, I think, for me. But the one thing that I have been doing, which I can't remember which project I learned it on, probably the Flower Power sweater actually, which was also knit flat, is that I knit it in panels until I hit the ribbing. This is top down, obviously. And then what I will do is seam it up and knit the ribbing for the body in the round whenever the front and back panels have been seamed. Just because I find that the seams are then far less obvious and the ribbing sits a lot neater and smoother, especially down the sides. So even though the pattern instructions say to work the ribbing at the end of the back panel, I've actually left the stitches on hold because I'm going to go back and join them in the round with the front panel and do all of the ribbing at the same time. And I feel like that is going to work better for me this time. I don't know. I'll report back. We'll see. So I think that's all we've got on the go this month. I say all, that's quite a lot. But to be honest, I have a lot of free time at the moment. So I'm thinking we'll make some good progress before Christmas. And the cow vest, the Betsy vest, is definitely going to be the first finished object. And then I'll probably crack on more with my cable knit Rory sweater after that. And the one thing that I have really been wanting to do is start a new colourwork project. But to be honest, I might not fork out for the yarn for that before the new year, so that might have to wait a little bit. But we'll see. I'll update you if the situation changes. Anyway, I hope everyone is having a lovely winter. I hope you've got lots of exciting things on the go, and good luck if you're knitting your Christmas presents. You're a better person than me. So I'll chat to you very, very soon, and I hope everyone has a lovely week.